Welcome to Global Risk Community Chat. Today we are joined by John Bree. I'm very happy to have you today here, John. Welcome.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's
Yes.
really great to be able to talk about one of my favorite topics.
Yes, great. But before we get into the topic, can you briefly introduce yourself to our audience?
Oh, sure. Well, my name is John Bree, and as I always say to people, it's Bree. It's the Irish Brie, not the French Brie. And although people still refer to me as the cheese, but anyway, I've been in this business a very long time. I've been with Supply Wisdom, which is a real-time risk intelligence company for 5 years now. Prior to that, I was with Deutsche Bank, both in London and in the US, as the global head of anti-fraud and then the global head of vendor risk management. So I ran fraud risk and vendor risk. And then prior to that, I was with Citibank for 12 years in the US and in Asia. So I've been in the risk operations, loss avoidance, risk avoidance business for more than 40 years.
Yeah, that's a lot of expertise for anybody to just, I think, handle. But today, I believe we are focusing on ESG and supply chain risk. So can you share your expertise and thoughts of it? I hear like 40 years of experience as well. So,
well, I think that, we've gone through a lot of changes in the last couple of years with the pandemic and everything taught us a lot. And I think that everyone is now really aware and sensitive to the fact that the true regulator in the world of any business is Mother Nature. So with that understanding and our desire to improve lives for everyone and to make, countries and cities and locations better, businesses are now focusing on the whole world of ESG, both environmental, social, and governance. And I think that this is a very important time because businesses can have a tremendous impact from how you run your own plant or facility to, if you're a bank, and I've spent most of my career in the financial industry, how you lend to customers, who your customers are. The power of finance can help people, do more to actually improve the world and make it a better place.
yeah, I agree actually. So let's then get more into the topic, and maybe could you share some key things when it comes to the ESG part of things, like things, where companies maybe can expect on the regulatory end or compliance end?
I think there's a couple of things that are going to be happening. There's going to be a regulatory impact. I think the regulators are starting to realize that, they need to put some guidelines. And to tell you the truth, I support the regulatory perspective because that kind of levels the playing field for everyone. So everyone has to sort of follow the same set of rules, which I think is helpful to some extent. Governments are starting to make changes. I mean, think about, the current administration in the U.S. actually issued executive directives about, being aware of the climate, understand your impact on the environment. We've seen that out of the EBA in Europe. I know it's happening in the UK. So regulators are now starting to realize that they can place guidelines for companies to follow so that they are doing more positive things, that you're not going to maybe support or finance a plant that is going to be extremely polluting. I think you'll see a direction in finance that will help communities build, facilities for clean water. So I think that's one of the things that where the regulators can use their power and their guidance to help companies to move in the right direction. So that's kind of where we are on the regulatory side. But I also think there's going to be localized pressure. In other words, a rule in the US may not be easily carried into, Asia or Africa or those areas. But those local communities are going to build and, requirements and regulations and guidelines so that international companies are going to have to be able to follow those and be flexible enough that you're going to be aware of what's going on in each of these jurisdictions or, areas that you're operating.
Yeah, I agree. And especially like as you mentioned, like with the sustainability and everything becoming a part, these need to be part of companies, I think, agenda when considering what they also do. Let's move on to a topic more into the supply chain as well, since as Start has also mentioned, and I'm hearing that you mentioned, of course, like local laws, international laws, and all those. But perhaps can you then share some takeaway points on how companies can maybe then build a robust ESG program that can also, allocate these changes on supply chain?
Well, just a quick comment on your comment about sustainability and resilience. The UN has been supporting this for a long time. We at Supply Wisdom have been involved in programs on sustainability. We've been on judging boards. We've been guiding people to do that because there is a need to have, be able to kind of replenish whatever we're using from the environment. So I think there's been there's a lot of activity towards that. I think it's only increasing now. But you raise a really good point, Ajay, about supply chain. One of the biggest challenges that people in the risk business have, and when I talk about risk, I'm talking about sourcing risk. In other words, your supply chain, which is inbound, where my raw material is coming from for any product that I am building or delivering. And then on the sourcing side, where am I sending my information and data to be processed and so on and so forth. So you have sort of an inbound and an outbound. The challenge that I've experienced personally, and I know a lot of my friends and peers across different industries, not only banking, face is having that real detail. What is in that supply chain? Not just my first vendor that we call third party, but who are they using? And then who is the fourth party using? So in other words, if you're really going to be sustainable, if you're going to, be ESG focused, you need to know the entire supply chain. So I always use an example of Nike, which is a really wonderful company, right? They make great products. Nike is not only going to be looking to their vendor, maybe the third party who is the shipping company that delivers the final product, but they may be going back to the actual maybe fifth or sixth link in the chain, right? That is providing them raw material. If they're not aware of that, if that company has a very poor ESG profile, well, that's going to come back and impact Nike. So I think that the biggest challenge is completely understanding your supply chain. And the second part of that is knowing what's going on in that supply chain, not once a year when you do an assessment or every other year. What's happening in real time? What problems are they facing? What rules are changing in that location? You need to know that. So if you're sitting in London, where I sat for many years with Deutsche Bank, I need to know if my supplier is in Sri Lanka. I need to know if there's going to be a rule change in Sri Lanka that's going to impact me and my company. So that's why the need for continuous real-time intelligence is so critical. And that's where the industry is going.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. Like that risk management, again, is just not, sitting in front of the desk looking at your own screen. It involves a lot of parts like this as well, like third parties, fourth, fifth, all so on. So yeah, I completely agree. We are kind of running low on time, so I want to end up with one last question, and that is how it is for you to be part of risk community.
Being part of a group is excellent. It's a great way to share thoughts and understand what's going on, get different perspectives. I mean, when I was in the banking industry in the Citi and Deutsche Bank, I learned a lot from my friends that were in the production business. So I think being part of that global risk community, for anyone that wants to be successful and have a good career and do the right thing for their company, you have to belong to a risk community or an information community.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that thought as well. We are unfortunately out of our time, but it was really a blast to have you. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you.